Hello, folks. Welcome back to the program. It's Chris live in Central Pennsylvania. My special guest today, Dr. Corne Mulder, the leader of the Freedom Front Plus, the longest-serving member of South Africa's parliament. He's here. We have him just briefly today. He has another commitment, has to leave at the top of the hour, so apologies for that. But we're going to get to the crux of the matter very quickly. Dr. Mulder, welcome to the program.
Good afternoon, Chris, and thank you very much for the opportunity. It's good to see you again.
Likewise, and I hope you had a good festive season, a safe season for yourself and your family.
Yes, you too. You too. Absolutely.
Thank you very much. For me, it's always just a year older because my birthday's on Christmas, so I don't get that excited. All right.
Yeah.
So South Africa's government had a response, a predictable response, an immediate response. Of course, as I've told people, when the Government National Unity concept, this coalition was formed between the Democratic Alliance and the ANC, and then the ANC went to all the other parties, like your own party, and asked it to join. When that was formed, the DA really did it from a position of weakness, in my view, because they didn't get any real levers of power. The finance ministry, defense, intelligence, the presidency, the deputy president, foreign minister, foreign affairs, the military, none of that is in the hands of the Democratic Alliance, and they can't really affect any change. And a good example of this is Durko, the foreign ministry, where they immediately came out and condemned the U.S. Raid, which, by the way, was an invasion. I think we'll probably agree on this terminology. It was a raid on Venezuela. And, of course, they simply ignore all the bad things that they were saying about, not South Africa, but the world was saying about Maduro days prior until the U.S. did this extradition. Your party, you put a statement out, was on Twitter about this. The ANC tried to admonish you for that. Can we talk a little bit about the ANC and maybe its hypocrisy in its approach to Russia and other events going around the world as opposed to what's happening in Venezuela?
Absolutely. You're absolutely correct. I think the problem started off that after the last election, no party achieved a majority, and we were forced to form some kind of cooperation or some kind of coalition or governing together. But it started off where the Democratic Alliance was under the impression that they could form an exclusive coalition with the ANC only. So the negotiations were between the Democratic Alliance and the ANC obviously insisted, as you correctly pointed out, that international relations remain the exclusive domain of the ANC. How the Democratic Alliance could have agreed to that, I cannot understand, because it's so vital in any country's positioning internationally that you cannot agree that one party can have a say on that all by themselves. Then the ANC went further and they wanted to create some kind of a government of national unity, but we were basically confronted with a deal that was already negotiated between the DA and the ANC. So that is where we are at the moment. Now, the practical problem is this. For the ANC, their international relations are just a continuation of ANC policies that they've been doing for the last 30 years. And the problem is that even though they became a government in 1994 and now in the Government of National Unity, they see international relations as a kind of a policy and a kind of approach to cozy up to their allies or their supporters during the struggle from their perspective. So they feel very much comfortable with the Cubas, with the Venezuelas, with the North Koreans, with Iran, with Hamas, with China, and all those countries. And the moment when you become a government, obviously you should act in the best interest of the country as a whole, which they haven't done. And last week specifically, the chairperson of the ANC, Mr. Gwede Mantashe, came out with a statement on the Government of National Unity that explains all of it, and we should have no doubt as in terms of how the ANC sees this whole exercise, and we should take note of that going forward.
Well, in fact, the Freedom Front Plus came out with a statement saying the Freedom Front Plus welcomes the actions of the United States against the illegal regime of Nicolás Maduro in Venezuela. The free world stands under a moral obligation to act against countries with autocratic governments where human rights are trampled and criminality cannot be separated from policy. I think this is a pretty bold statement. I'll ask you about that in just a moment. But, we hear that this latching on to, multilateralism and the United Nations and the role, and hearing President Ramaphosa repeatedly say that now in the past 2 days that this is not the norm, that this is a new direction. We risk the world descending into chaos. I mean, I'm not sure what world he's been watching since 1945, but the world I've been watching since 1945, in fact, is a very different one in which we've seen Vietnam invade Cambodia to stop the slaughter of Cambodians under Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge, one in which we've seen Tanzania invade Uganda to stop the slaughter of civilians in Uganda, one in which we've seen others take action unilaterally, and there's been nary a word said. And we've also seen invasions like Russia invading Ukraine. It's interesting to see the ANC talk about how this is a changed world, but I don't really see it as a changed world. Can you comment on your party statement and also on my thoughts there? Oops, I've lost Dr. Mulder. He's gone. Oops. All right. Well, folks, I've lost Dr. Mulder there. There you go. Let's see if we get him back. He's still got his phone because he just read the message. We'll see if he gets back up. Well, he's not there. I'm waiting to see. Maybe someone came in his office. Who knows? But yep, I've lost him. Sorry about that, folks. Yeah. So wow, interesting. Oh, here he comes back up. Trying to come. There he is. He's coming back. All right, there he is. Now his phone is...
Yes, I don't know if you can hear me, Chris.
I can hear you.
Okay, fine. No, I don't know what happened. My computer just died. I'm supposed to do that. There's nothing wrong with the computer, but suddenly just...
The connection is very poor.
As it might. No, as I pointed out, the problem is that the ANC, as you correctly pointed out, wants to be friends with all the rogues in the world. They feel comfortable with that. And as you correctly also pointed out, suddenly now they've got an attack of being very much aware of international law and multilateral institutions, etc. But it's strange. It's very hypocritical because I didn't see the South African government writing a letter to the UN when Russia invaded Ukraine 4 years ago. They didn't then demand an emergency meeting of the Security Council. Nothing of the sort, not even a statement, which is a clear indication. The mere fact that they are acting in this way indicates to you where their allegiances lie. And they're not acting in the best interest of the country as a whole, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, and that's the point I was going back to. By the way, when you came back, your camera is now in portrait rather than landscape. I don't know if you're able to change that. I'll let you adjust that. And I want to go back and read your statement from your party and then get your comment and then get my comment in there. Yeah, that's better. We're back to normal. It's a little awkward to see you there. All right, so you got a statement from the Freedom Front Plus. So the Freedom Front Plus welcomes the actions of the USA against the illegal regime of Nicolás Maduro in Venezuela. The free world stands under a moral obligation to act against countries with autocratic governments where human rights are trampled and criminality cannot be separated from policy. But the strange thing about the African National Congress, Dr. Mulder, is that they are close friends with the mullahs in Tehran who trample human rights and murder people and execute people in prisons and commit gender-based violence and assaults on women who are in prison. We also see the criminal acts of the communist regime in Beijing, who are also their friends, against the Uyghurs, Muslims, who they imprison and harvest organs from. We've seen the behavior of an autocratic state in Russia that's also the friends of the ANC, and of course Cuba, and of course Venezuela. So it is, I think, very rich for them to talk about international law and morality and the Freedom Charter when their friends are just a bunch of thugs. I mean, so that's your statement from your party. Any comments on your statement?
Yes, well, the fact is that is how the ANC experiences the world. That is how they see the world. And they don't have any problem with those things. They don't feel any obligation to report any of these things. They don't feel any obligation to criticize any of these things. They're quite happy and quite comfortable. But when the United States takes action to apprehend a fugitive of justice, then suddenly it's a huge problem. And just the hypocrisy is screaming to heaven. It's quite obvious that this is the situation, but that is how the ANC has been operating. And as a matter of fact, when it comes to international relations, that has been their position all along since 1994. Nothing has changed. As a matter of fact, I mentioned earlier that the chairperson of the ANC, Mr. Montashe, last week referred to the government of national unity. Now, technically, if you form a coalition, all the parties are supposed to find some kind of middle ground, some kind of compromise, and try to find middle ground that you can take forward, also with regard to international relations. What did Montashe say? And I quote, he said that the coalition is a coalition of contesting forces. It's not a coalition of common minds. Exactly. So as far as they are concerned, they need the support of other parties to stay in power to implement their policies, which they cannot do if they're not a majority. There's no movement whatsoever to accommodate or to compromise or to move South Africa in a different direction. And I think all people in South Africa should take note. That is the ANC. I feel, honestly, the ANC is not capable of any self-correction. We've seen that over and over again.
Well, not to put you on the spot, but you raise a question, intentionally or unintentionally there, that's apropos. The question has been all along, how can the government of national unity, how long can it last? I mean, these fractures seem to be increasing. Even the Democratic Alliance, it was a bit tepid, did make a statement that what's happening in Durko doesn't represent all of us. It just represents the ANC, which I was a little surprised. Minister Steenhuisen and his party have been very quiet of late. So what happens? I mean, I'm not trying to ask if the Freedom Front Plus is going to leave the coalition, but does this coalition continue when the ANC continues to act as if they have 66% of the parliamentary votes? I mean, they are a plurality party in a government of national unity and acting as if they rule the roost. And of course, they control all the key levers of government. So does the GNU continue? And that has another question, which I'll give you in a moment.
Sure. I think the reality is that the Democratic Alliance, as you have mentioned, are very quiet on the whole Venezuela issue. They do not want to take a clear stand. They do not want to criticize the ANC's position. And they did not come out in support of the administration, the Trump administration, and what was done to bring a fugitive of justice to law. So I think one should take note of that. And I think the Democratic Alliance is in a very difficult position. You'll remember now that they went into the government of national unity under the pretense that they've got to prevent the doomsday coalition where the ANC comes together with the EFF and MK. Now, that is your reason why you went into that. You are captured. You can never get out. Because if that is your only argument, what are you doing basically there? And obviously, the ANC realizes that if the Democratic Alliance pulls out, and they did, remember with the budget, the DA did not support the budget originally, neither did we. And the ANC still maintained, and they still got a majority with the support of some of the other smaller parties. So there's a very fine balance. Technically, the government of national unity is supposed to continue until 2029, but it's unlikely, it seems, that we will get to that point, because if this is how it's going to be done, then one should ask yourself, what are you really doing there? And that is a very important question.
I think it is. It's one I've been asking from the very outset. I mean, again, not to pick on the other members of the coalition, which includes your party, but this was a bilateral agreement between the ANC and DA, and the ANC went behind the DA's back and invited other parties to join it. So, I mean, from the very outset, they had no intention of honoring it, in my view. So go back to when we got broken up there by the internet. Let me get back to this question. One of the things I was saying is that Ramaphosa has said now twice, 2 days in a row, talked about how this is a threat to the international order, the rules-based order, and how can a state just do this and, acting unilaterally, yada, yada, yada. But here's the thing. When no one took action in Cambodia, Vietnam invaded Cambodia to end the slaughter of the Cambodians by Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge. When the Ugandans were being slaughtered by Obote's government in Uganda, the Tanzanian military invaded Uganda to put an end to that horrible situation. This is not exactly unprecedented, and states act all the time unilaterally. Even South Africa does so. They like to pretend otherwise, but Operation Bolias in Lesotho is nothing more than South Africa asserting its own sovereignty over Lesotho's government by pretending to have a SADC mission in which they offered to provide transport, logistics, fuel, and things like that, and rations for the Botswana Defense Force if they would go down in a SADC mission. But of course, I know the BDF, and they were left hanging dry. And in fact, SANDF soldiers ran away when a shotgun discharged in one mountain village. And so it was quite embarrassing. But South Africa's invaded Lesotho. South Africa sent 5 missions, ostensibly peacekeeping missions, to Comoros over the past 2 decades. So this has been the norm. As Thucydides said in Peloponnesian War, on the Peloponnesian War, the Malian dialogue, the strong do what they want, the weak suffer what they must. And to me, South Africa is coming from a position of weakness. And I believe, and I'd like your thoughts on this, I believe that President Ramaphosa is trying to play the role of global interlocutor to ignore and distract from what's happening in South Africa. 40% unemployment, collapsing infrastructure, poor ports, yada, yada, yada. I believe that's what's going on. Any thoughts on that's quite a few things I just threw out here.
No, I think you're right. You'll remember that after 1994, with Mr. Mandela around, he was the darling of the international community, and South Africa did take a very strong position with regard to human rights, etc. And President Mandela didn't shy away to intervene when in Nigeria, for example, there was a former president to be executed, and President Mandela didn't mind to interfere, and he spoke his mind. But South Africa has lost that position a long, long time ago. We are no longer the darling of the world. As a matter of fact, we are now a problematic situation in South Africa. And everybody knows that. The second thing is that you'll remember that there's been a push all along for the institutions, international institutions, to be redesigned and be re-put together, because I think many of the countries would love to see that United Nations operate only like the General Assembly. This thing about the Security Council of superpowers who have certain veto rights is not what they want. Now, that's a very good example to a certain extent also of what democracy is not. Democracy cannot be just Bundu rule where the majority just shouts and then they do whatever they like. Countries have their own investment, they've got their own interests, they've got their national security to protect, etc. And if a country like South Africa, who is a middle-class kind of country in that instance, we should know our place and we should know how to position ourselves to the best benefit and interest of South Africa. Why on earth would South Africa prefer to pick a fight with the United States? The biggest economy, the military strongest country in the world. Why do we want to pick a fight with them and try to move in another direction? And that is part of the philosophy, unfortunately, of the ANC. And the underlying thing is this. If you build your foreign policy on your former allies or supporters during a struggle, and that is your focus, then obviously you'll have this kind of policy which is not in the interest. And that's exactly why I issued the statement.
Well, I appreciate the statement. I think a lot of people do. And it raises a question here. You know, the ANC trying to admonish other members of the GNU like they did the DA. And I think I would think it's fair to say that there was a fair bit of admonishment coming your way after your trip to the States from the ANC. But them trying to admonish you, saying that we're a government of national unity. This is a unified position. It's utter poppycock. It's not a unified position. Who from any other party has any role in the foreign ministry in Durko? Nobody that I know of. It's an entirely ANC-run operation. And I'm sorry, but you know, I know that you're leader of a political party. You don't have to comment on this, but it's run by the biggest buffoon in the cabinet. I mean, Ronald Lamola has the intelligence of a mayfly. I mean, the guy says the most stupid things. He actually goes on CNN the week of the G20 summit when the U.S. says they're not going to participate because their officials have been doxxed throughout the year and they've been ignored. And then he goes on to CNN's Misinformation, White Genocide, sham documentary that I was asked to participate in. And of course, they cut me out because I refused to say what they wanted me to say. I told the truth. But in that documentary, he says that the refugee program is a white supremacy program, as if 1,000 white South Africans coming to America has changed the demographics of a country of 350 million people. And he calls Donald Trump the leader of the white supremacist movement, just like Ibrahim Rasool did. I mean, this is beyond stupid. I mean, this guy is not very bright, and he's the one that leads foreign policy. And obviously, he's speaking on behalf of Ramaphosa and the National Executive Committee. This is what the ANC wants to tell the world. It's not a good look, Dr. Mulder.
It's not. It's definitely not. The reality is that there's no influence from any other political party with regard to Durko. These things are not discussed. They are not brought to the meetings of the leaders of the different political parties in the government of national unity. And Durko is a power all by themselves. So we take note of that. And you must also understand that our Minister of International Relations is lately being mentioned as a possible successor in the succession battle for leader of the country. So time will tell what comes out of that. We don't know. But you're unfortunately right. And that is exactly a huge part of the problems that South Africa currently is facing, is because of our international positioning in the international community. And we are paying a dear price for that, for this ideological positioning. We have got the tariffs now. We've got all these challenges. And that's a typical also ANC thing. They are doubling down. The Secretary General of the ANC reacted, Mr. Fikile Mbalula reacted yesterday in a statement where he said, and obviously they take it from the sovereignty position of South Africa's sovereignty. Now, first of all, a country should not be able to hide behind that if you are guilty of human rights violations. It's not that simple. You cannot just do that. But secondly, it was kind of a threat. He said, we must understand that if South Africa's sovereignty is ever threatened, there will be friends and other people. He framed it in a certain way that will come to South Africa's rescue. Now, nobody is threatening South Africa's sovereignty. That's not on the table. It's something completely different. The people in South Africa are a peace-loving group of people. They would like to see South Africa prosper. They would love to have normal relations with the United States. But we are being hamstrung by a specific ANC government that is driven by their outdated ideology, and that's the problem.
Indeed, that is the problem. That outdated ideology is a really serious issue here, and it's ironic to see the behavior and acting as if sovereignty is under threat. Fikile Mbalula talking about mobilizing the SANDF to go defend Venezuela. First off, it was a raid. There's no U.S. occupation forces there. Second, yes. The SANDF, would this be the same SANDF that was just embarrassed by M23 rebels in Goma? I mean, come on, seriously?
Yeah, and you see the other problem is I think they are under the impression that the action against Maduro is simply a President Trump action. They've forgotten that one of the last things that President Biden, as the Democrat president, did was to raise the bounty on Maduro's head from $15 to $25 million. That was done on the 25th of January of last year. So but I don't think they realize that, or they've remembered that. They are so focused on President Trump and the Trump administration that they immediately take this specific line.
Well, it's Trump derangement syndrome, which is filtered over like COVID to South Africa. It's absolutely, I mean, everything Trump does is bad, whether it's good or not. No, it's exactly right. Also, it goes back, just very quick, I know we're short on time, but this goes back to this whole thing, it's Trump, it's Trump, it's Trump. No, I've told people repeatedly for the past year, and I think you also tell people in circles in South Africa, that this predates Trump. I mean, from my position, this started with the Article 98 waiver that South Africa refused to sign for the International Criminal Court back in 2000, 2001. And from that point on, these relations have deteriorated ever since then. And this, in fact, was a bill introduced by a bipartisan bill by Democrats and Republicans in the previous Congress while Biden was president. And then Ronnie Jackson brought it back, and now Kennedy from Louisiana has also brought it back. So this isn't Trump. This all predates Trump. America's been angry with South Africa for a long time. We've not been asserting our sovereignty, and now we've got a new sheriff in town, and things are a little bit different.
No, you're absolutely right. And I've said this in South Africa to many people. If they want to understand what's happening at the moment, they should take the time and read the document that was released by the White House in November with regard to the new national security strategy of the United States. Go and read that. It's not even a long document, and then you'll understand exactly what America's position is, what the states are doing, and why they are doing that. And then you can interact in an intelligent way by saying, well, now we understand this, that, and the other. But many people are not aware of that, or they don't want to take note of that reality, and that's why they react the way that they do.
And the indictment against Maduro goes back to 2020. This is not something new. Biden regime refused to go after him. Trump actually went after him. And here's the thing. I don't know if you've seen the reporting, but Trump opposed this. He overrode Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, back in June and July when Rubio wanted to go in then. And Trump said, no, let's give him a chance to offload. Let's give him a chance to leave the country rather than resort to this. And in fact, Trump was reticent to do this.
Yes, no, I saw that. That's just how it basically played out. And unfortunately, people are so negative in terms of any perception that they don't want to understand that. But also in South Africa at the moment, I must honestly say, I get overwhelming support because of the statement that I took. And people are asking, why is the Democratic Alliance silent on this? But I think it's an absolutely a point in principle that needs to be made. I'm sick and tired of being fed propaganda all the time that South Africa, the perception being created about South Africa, that we're all in line with this kind of line that the ANC is taking, and we are not.
Well, propaganda is one thing, Dr. Mulder, and, I appreciate why governments do it. All governments engage in propaganda and misinformation at times. But the bottom line is South Africa is collapsing around us. I mean, it's getting worse by the day. The treatment of its racial and ethnic minorities, the infrastructure, the governance that's taking place. And that brings this next question. I'll put you on the spot a little bit here if you're able to answer it or willing to answer it. So I don't usually put you on the spot. But the elections are coming up, and now's the time to talk about this instead of waiting 90 days before the election. Many South Africans are very angry, especially black South Africans, with the ruling plurality party, the ANC. And also a lot of people are unhappy with the Democratic Alliance after its lack of taking a stance on issues that they said were lines in the sand with Bella and NHI and expropriation on compensation. Is the Freedom Front Plus preparing for this election? How do you think you're going to do in it? Do you think that you'll be able to draw? Go ahead. Sorry.
Absolutely, no doubt. I think we are working very strategically, and I think we know exactly what we want to achieve. And we are working with a strategy towards the election. The election will be in November. We expect it the first week of November. And it's an absolutely crucial election because it will lie the groundwork for the bigger election in 2029 on national level. And I predict we're going to see many, many coalition governments, real coalitions, hopefully for the first time throughout South Africa, because you will only get a real coalition when the ANC is no longer the larger party in such a coalition. Then you can start to move forward. At the moment, we are seeing a lot of support flowing into the party, a lot of people coming forward and would like to participate, and we welcome that, because what we are simply doing is we are standing up and say, here we stand to be counted, and this is what we believe, and we present that to the electorate, and I think that is what one needs to do.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see when this election takes place because, as you say, it is a critical election. I said that the 2021 election was a pivotal election. Unfortunately, people didn't show up. Only 31% of South Africans showed up to vote, so that was kind of problematic. and we wound up with fractious coalitions once again. I know that we're going to see in places like KwaZulu-Natal, the ANC has been obliterated there. So has the economic freedom fighters. They thought they're both pretty much gone in that province. MK and IFP are ruling the roost with the DA a third spot. So I think that we're going to see coalitions there that exclude these other parties completely. But I think there's a lot of room for improvement in the Western Cape, in Gauteng, potentially in Northwest for your party, maybe even the Northern Cape.
Yes.
Do you have a deep bench? Because, one of the problems with opposition parties and minority parties is that they oftentimes, and I'm not speaking about yours, that's why I'm asking, they oftentimes don't have experienced people that have been counselors or been mayors or have been provincial legislators. Do you have the bench? Do you think that you'll be able to, let's say you have, let me just make a bold prediction. The Freedom Front Plus gets 7.5% in several municipalities. And that might be understating. Some places like Nice, maybe you'll get 15%. But let's say you get a big percentage. Do you have the people that are ready to step into that role?
I really believe we do. We are a party that has proven ourselves to be the kingmaker, that we are responsible in terms of finding common ground by bringing people and parties together, and I think we can do that. And we do have the expertise. A lot of our people have had lots of experience in the last couple of years. And I always say, if you want to form a good government, you first have to be in opposition for a long time to understand how to operate without political power, that when you get there, you know how to respect that because you've been without power for a long time.
Well, that's good to hear. That's encouraging as we come up. When will we start hearing campaign things from the Freedom Front Plus? Any projection on that?
Sooner than later. We're absolutely moving straight ahead. And you'll see, typically in South Africa, that this year being an election year, it will start off from the day that Parliament opens, the State of the Nation address by the President. It will start from that evening immediately, where parties will start to position themselves. We are ready to do so exactly that.
And one final comment here, if you don't mind, Dr. Mulder. I know you've got to go,
yes.
and I've also got to get going as well. But I hate to leave this conversation, which is quite productive with such a large audience, but we both have responsibilities. And the final question is, a member of the ANC recently responded to a Twitter comment about South Africa should acquire nuclear weapons with which to attack America. It's absolutely outrageous, ludicrous to say the least. But the fact that a senior member of the African National Congress felt empowered to say such a stupid thing on social media speaks volumes to me about the immaturity of the people governing South Africa. Any thoughts?
Yeah, it was a statement of desperation. In other words, you don't have any other tools. You've got nothing else to put on the table. And I do have a strange sense of humor. I responded to that tweet and I said the following: I take note of what you are saying, but maybe you should remember that the Afrikaners were central in South Africa's nuclear program the last time when we built nuclear weapons. So I don't think you're going to succeed without us. But the reality is that it's a completely irrational kind of statement to make in the times that we live. We don't have to go to war with anybody. That's unnecessary. And I've conveyed that to the South African public and to the ANC, that the United States specifically wants to be a friend of South Africa. They want to trade with South Africa. South Africa can be the absolutely locomotive that pulls things forward in Africa. But then we need a change of attitude in terms of policy and in terms of ideological positioning.
So this is probably an unfair question, but why not ask it before we wrap up? Is there anything that would lead to a clear break? Maybe the Freedom Front Plus or other parties would leave the GNU, something the ANC would do. Is there anything on the table that might do that? Because frankly, from my perspective, all I see is the ANC running South Africa after this coalition has been going on for a year and a half.
Yes. Well, the fact is that I've said right from the beginning that I was very much in favor of a government of national unity, but that should have been a real government of national unity, where compromises are found and where a new positioning is done in terms of policy. It shouldn't be just to enable the ANC to continue, although they don't have a majority. So that is quite important. And I've said all along, if you around the table can influence where decisions are taken, then I need to be there. But if it becomes clear that we have got no influence whatsoever, the ANC is doing exactly just what they want, then that question very strongly arises: what are you doing there? And I can assure you, I'm under a lot of pressure from people out there at the moment that says, walk away from this. I still want to be constructive. I still want to be positive, but that's not going to make that I will not speak my mind in terms of what needs to be done. And hopefully we can engage with the president. He committed himself to another meeting with the leaders of the Government of National Unity, and where the first and second ones were a little bit more jovial, I think we will now suddenly, at least hopefully, get to the more nitty-gritty things, and then we'll take a decision at the right time.
Well, I realize as leader of the party, you're not making local decisions, but our viewers in Feldrift have pointed out they need a strong candidate in the West Coast there. Feldrift, I'd let you know that very quickly. Dr. Mulder, any last thoughts from you about the Venezuela situation, about South Africa's foreign policy?
Yes,
maybe a message, I hope.
No, yeah, absolutely. No, I think what people should understand is I honestly believe we are seeing at the moment the biggest geopolitical shifts in the world since the fall of the Berlin Wall. And people must understand that, and they must understand what is happening and what is playing out. The United States, they are not playing games. They know exactly what they want to achieve. It's got a huge impact way beyond the Western Hemisphere with regard to Europe. Europe is starting to wake up and to see where they should go, etc. And that creates huge opportunities for South Africa in the African context and the international context if we are prepared to grapple that and to move forward. But the moment we are being pulled back with outdated things, and it's up to the electorate. It's for the people to decide. The electorate has got the power in their hands to make a change. And I honestly believe, unlike the Democratic Alliance, I am not concerned about the EFF and MK. I believe we should address ordinary South African citizens from all communities, black, white, colored, Indian, doesn't matter, with a message of hope that we can change South Africa for the better. We need to get people to register, to go out and vote, and then we can change things for the right direction. And I'm an optimist. I think we're going to achieve that.
Dr. Corne Mulder, thank you very much. I appreciate your time, very generous of you today, and your insights and where the Freedom Front Plus stands in this issue with Venezuela. And I'm 100% with you. I've been saying this for some time, as Trump has made it very clear within the first 30 days that a new sheriff is in town, and that the namby-pamby constructivism, liberalism of the 1990s and the aught decade, when we started with Clinton talking about engagement and enlargement, isn't really the world we live in. We live in a world of hard realities of political power. Right. And if you have political power and might, then you can do what you want. Russia invaded Ukraine and nobody stopped them. The U.S. snatched Maduro, who is a wanted narco-terrorist, according to the U.S. indictment, and nobody could stop it. And the bottom line is the United States bombed Iran because there's nuclear capability and nobody could stop it. That's the world we live in. And the South African government needs to wake up to that and stop flailing. Anyway, that's my thoughts.
Yes. No, thank you very much, Chris, and thank you for the good work you are doing, and we'll talk soon again. Thanks a million.
All right, thanks a lot. Dr. Corne Mulder, leader of the Freedom Front Plus. I'll let him drop off, and then I'll wrap up here in just a second. We'll be done. So, folks, thanks for tuning in. I appreciate being here. We really sorry we have to go on a short one for this. Dr. Mulder's dropping off, I think, there. Did he get out? Let me see. No, he's still working on it. Let me help him out there. Oh, he's out. He got it. All right, so, yeah, that's it from the Freedom Front Plus, their position on this, and that's a little clarification. Also, a little bit about the elections coming up. So thank you for tuning in. Be sure to hit the like button if you haven't done that, folks. If you're not a subscriber, why don't you become a subscriber to this channel? It doesn't cost you anything but a moment of your time. You can also hit that like button down there at the bottom.
That was easy.
Only takes a moment of your time. You realize that your chat, your arrival into the stream, and your activity there drives the algorithm to get more people here, and we do appreciate that. So thank you very much. There's 1,261 people still watching here after Dr. Mulder's left, but 577 likes. Could you hit that like button? It really doesn't take but a moment. That'll really drive more people to watch this video after we're finished with it. So thank you so much for that. I'll be back with the news at the bottom of the hour. I'm currently editing a video. I've got multiple things going on. Just before the stream, I was being inundated with people freaking out over their names being sold. Well, their names aren't being sold. They're not being leaked. This is actually commercial companies buying your data. It's very simple. You do a Google search and you say, hey, a refugee or asylum. Guess what? Your information is collected by Google and sold to third parties, and that's why you're getting visa lottery offers. Well, that's been going on for the better part of a year. People have been freaking out about it. Like, there's a leak of information. There's no leak of information. Now, I don't know what's actually going on in this particular case, but I believe that's a situation in my cursory examination. If I'm incorrect, I'll correct the record, but that's my initial thoughts on that. Anyway, folks, thank you very much, and thanks to Dr. Mulder for coming on short notice. Really appreciate it for what is going to be a massively busy day for me. We start out with this nonsense about the visa lottery program. In addition to that, I'm editing a video about Ramaphosa and his response, the ANC's response. We did this interview with Dr. Mulder. After that, I am then doing my news program. After the news program, I've got Ronaldo. I'm on his program. After I'm on Ronaldo's program, I have to leave and depart for a medical procedure for my hip. And then I come back from that, and I've got my radio show tonight. So busy day, folks. Thank you all so much. And that's on top of answering about 75 emails last night and again today for people who are panicking over the refugee program and have questions. Thank you all so much. Be sure to hit the like button, and thank you for becoming subscribers, folks. Who thinks Chris hinted at him being Santa Claus, given his birthdays and Christmas? Not me, Emil. I didn't hint. All right, that's it. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Dr. Mulder. Bye-bye, donkey. Calibre. I'm still here. What happened? Oh, I know what happened. Sorry about that, folks. Here you go. That's better.